You walk into a room tonight. You try everything. The right stories, the calibrated laugh, the timed opinions. You go home invisible. Here's the 7-minute pattern that explains why and how to reverse it permanently. I've spent years watching how certain people command a room without raising their voice. And I've watched others, smart, capable, genuinely interesting people, try desperately to be felt and become invisible the harder they push. There's a specific pattern behind both outcomes. And the uncomfortable part, the advice most people follow, is actively making the second outcome more likely. By the end of this, you'll see exactly why and how to use it tonight. Picture this. You walk into a room, a meeting, a party, a first date, and somewhere in the first few minutes, it starts. That quiet, urgent pressure beneath the surface. Seem interesting. Seem confident. Seem like someone worth knowing. So you start performing. You mention the right things. You calibrate your laugh. You time your opinions. You work the conversation like you're managing a project with a deadline you can't name. And sometimes it works. On the surface, people respond. They smile, they nod. But you go home and feel hollow. Like you were physically present but absent in every way that mattered. Like you ran a race and finished further from the finish line than when you started. Here's what that feeling actually is. It's information. Your nervous system telling you that the version of yourself you showed up as tonight wasn't you. It was a projection of you. A performance. And performances, no matter how well rehearsed, cannot produce the one thing you were actually there for. Connection. The performance doesn't fail because you're bad at it. It fails because people aren't responding to you. They're watching the show. And somewhere beneath their awareness, they know the difference. But here's what nobody tells you about why. And it's the part that changes everything. Here's an observation I keep returning to, and once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. A laser is loud. Not in sound, but in presence. It screams energy in a single aggressive direction. You can't miss it. It demands attention. Sunlight simply exists. Quiet, even, unhurried, and it grows entire ecosystems. The laser gets noticed. The sunlight sustains life. I call this the sunlight principle, and it's operating everywhere around you, in every conversation you're watching, or inside of. Most people run like lasers, concentrated directional displays of personality, insight, humor, warmth, engineered to be seen. But the people who are genuinely, effortlessly magnetic, they work like sunlight. They're not performing calm. They are calm. They're not displaying warmth. They're paying attention to the actual person in front of them. Consider this. A car with a loud exhaust announces itself constantly. A well-tuned engine just moves. The energy that would have been noise becomes motion instead. This isn't a personality type. It's not something you're born with or aren't. It's what naturally emerges when you stop spending energy on the signal and redirect it toward the thing itself. Gravity without theatrics. Warmth without theatric. The difference between being something and performing something. Here's how this pattern operates, and why it's nearly invisible until someone names it. When you perform, you're running two processes at once. There's the conversation happening in the room, and underneath it, there's the internal monitoring loop. How am I landing? Did that land? Do they think I'm interesting? That second process drains you. It divides your attention. And people feel divided attention. Not consciously, not in a way they can articulate, but they register it. The conversation turns slightly transactional. There's an agenda just beneath the surface, and they sense it without knowing why. Now watch what happens when you drop the monitoring entirely. When you genuinely stop calculating how you're landing and start tracking what the other person is actually saying, something shifts. You become fully present. And full presence is so rare that when someone encounters it, they almost don't know what to do with it at first. They just know they want more of it. Your undivided attention, freely given, is one of the most powerful assets you carry into any room. Here's where this gets uncomfortable, and where nearly every piece of advice on presence completely misses the point. Most people who try to perform less end up performing a different kind of performance. Performing humility, performing calm, performing the easygoing, unbothered version of themselves. That's not the sunlight principle. That's still the laser, just pointed sideways. And it costs you just as much. Let me show you what this looks like in practice, because the gap between concept and execution is where most people lose it. You're in a team meeting. The problem is on the table. You have the answer. You've seen this before. You know what needs to happen. The old impulse. Jump in fast. Claim the insight. Signal that you arrived there first. Here's the twist. What if you paused? Asked one clarifying question. Not to perform curiosity, but because you want to understand the room before you speak. Then, when the moment is right, you offer the idea plainly. No build-up. No fanfare. The solution, delivered clean. Watch what happens. People lean in. The idea lands harder, because it didn't arrive attached to an ego-seeking validation. It arrived as a solution. You didn't perform authority. You had it. Or consider a first conversation with someone new. Instead of rotating through your most impressive material, you ask one genuine question and follow it wherever it leads. You stop broadcasting. You start receiving. The conversation finds its own depth. And somehow, without trying, you're the most interesting person they spoke to that night. Because what happens next is the part nobody expects. Now, let me be precise about what this is not, because these mistakes are everywhere, and they're expensive. Mistake 1. Confusing silence with presence. Going quiet isn't the same as being present. You can sit in complete silence and remain entirely absorbed in your internal monitoring loop, replaying what you just said, rehearsing what comes next. That's not the sunlight principle. That's a quieter performance with the same cost. Mistake 2. Performing humility. This one is subtle and common. It surfaces as excessive self-deprecation, or the conspicuously modest person who is visibly waiting to be corrected. If you're working to seem humble, you're still working to seem something. The laser is on. It's just aimed lower. Mistake 3. Using presence as a technique. This is where most people fail, and it's the most important one. If you're practicing full attention because you want people to like you more, you've missed the point entirely. The goal isn't the social result. The goal is that you genuinely stop outsourcing your sense of value to how the room responds. That shift from seeking validation to not needing it is where the actual power lives. Here's your assignment for the next 48 hours. Simple in concept, uncomfortable in practice, which means it's working. In every conversation, every single one, your only job before you offer anything is to understand the other person's actual situation, not their surface statement, their actual situation. Before an opinion, before advice, before humor, before anything, receive first. Notice what shifts. Notice whether people seem more or less drawn to you when you stop broadcasting and start receiving. You're not performing presence. You're removing the noise, and what remains, when the noise is gone, is something you already possessed. You just couldn't hear it over the signal. Let's pull this together. The sunlight principle is this. The energy you spend broadcasting yourself is energy you're stealing from being yourself. The performance doesn't just fail to produce connection. It actively prevents it, because it replaces the real thing with a signal designed to approximate the real thing. Magnetic people aren't more charismatic than you. They're not more interesting, more confident, or more polished. They've stopped redirecting their energy toward management and pointed it back toward the moment they're actually in. That person you remember, the one who made you feel like you were the only person in the room. They weren't doing anything extraordinary. They were paying attention, which means the only thing standing between you and that kind of presence isn't talent, it's habit, and habits change. If this framework resonated, subscribe. New frameworks every week, built around patterns in human behavior that most people never stop to name. The most powerful thing you can offer another person isn't your best self. It's your actual self. Undivided, present, already enough.